just go ahead and tell an esteemed audience a little bit about the background of Nancy Richardson Fischer and how you come to become the big and famous author that you are this evening.
Well, I hope someday to become a big and famous author, but let's see. I started writing stories when I was a little kid, like lots of writers do, went to college and studied creative writing at Cornell on the East Coast. And my first job was for Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus as a traveling writer, which was a very interesting first job. The way that I actually was hired is they sent me to Ohio to interview King Tusk, who is the largest traveling land mammal on the face of the earth, and he turned out to be a big elephant. I wrote a story about him. They hired me, and then I spent the next year traveling with the circus to different towns, writing stories for the entertainment section of weekly newspapers about the clowns who were from that town, or trapeze artists, or a clown wedding. So that taught me how to write really, really quickly and on deadline, and never to have any sort of writer's block, because you just had to come in, get your story, and get it done. And then I worked as a grant writer for UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. And while I was there, I fortuitously met someone from Lucasfilm and offered to write on spec for Lucasfilm. They have all the Star Wars books that are continuing on. The saga continues in books. So I wrote on spec for them, which is for free, for a year while I was doing my other job. And eventually they hired me to write a trilogy. So I was lucky enough to write a Star Wars trilogy, and at the same time ended up getting my first sport autobiography, where I co-wrote with an athlete or a coach, which was another fortuitous job. I had a friend who was working one summer for Hyperion, and they had bought the rights to Bella Caroli's story. And she said, "We have a pile of proposals. Why don't you write one and put it in the pile?" And I did, and he read it, and he called me, and he flew me to his ranch. And from there, I started writing sport autobiographies. And after that, I started writing young adult fiction. So that's it in a nutshell.
There is a lot to unpack there. I'm going to definitely ask you some follow-up questions.
Sure.
But that is either an incredibly fortuitous series of jobs and events that happened that led you there, or an incredibly skilled applier for jobs is the wrong word. What am I looking for? Social climber? Work climber? Entrepreneur?
You put yourself in the way of good luck and see opportunities. And so I definitely did that. And then, of course, you have to be able to follow through and actually produce something worthwhile, or you can't keep moving along. So the first book was Bella Caroli's story, and I guess if I had done a really bad job at that, then there wouldn't have been a second one. So whatever opportunities I saw that came my way, I tried to rise to the occasion of those opportunities.
Gotcha. So what does, because again, that's that's an incredible string. So you got some kind of magic juice that's got you going. That's a certain skill set, a certain mindset. So tell us a little bit more. How do you prepare for finding a job that you want?
Gosh, I think to me, to get a job that you want, it's making the next right step and being a bit of a chameleon. You know, I'm not a gymnast, but I wrote Bella's story and Nadia's story because I did a ton of research and just kept moving forward. I'm not a jockey, but I wrote Julie Crone's story because I read all about being a jockey, and I fit into her life and her schedule so that I was permitted to live with her and travel with her. Same with Monica Seles, the tennis player. So I think it's doing your research and just moving forward and not being afraid to fail.
Do you have, I assume, some kind of athletic ability? I know I read on your site that you do something. Is it kite surfing? Is what you're doing?
I love kite surfing and mountain biking and backcountry skiing. When I was a kid, I was a diver, and even in college, I dove a little bit. So I definitely know what it's like to train, and I know what it's like to get hurt in your sport, because divers tend to get hurt a lot because the closer you are to the end of the board, the higher your score. So, you're always trying to get a higher score, and you're always getting closer and closer. So I understand what it's like, yes, to train, but not at the level of those athletes. Definitely not at their level, but I can appreciate what they do, definitely.
And what is kite surfing, just out of curiosity?
So you wear a harness, and there's a kite that's 25 meters, I think, above you on lines that can actually, if they wrap around you, it's called degloving. They could take the skin right off your bones. So they're not lines that you could easily cut. You'd need a knife. And you put a surfboard on your feet, and you go out on a really windy day in the ocean, or I live on a really huge river. River sounds strange to kite surf on, but we get enormous waves, and you surf on the waves using the kite to pull you.
So with the kite, are you lifting up off the water by a few feet?
When you want to, you can pull the bar in, and you can loft and jump too.
Awesome.
Yeah, fun. Yeah.
That sounds like something I would love to watch you do from the safety of the beach. So it sounds like a lot of good ways to get hurt, and you also still have to worry about sharks. My goodness.
Yeah, there are a few concerns. I'm scared to death of sharks. When I fall in the water, I hear the soundtrack for Jaws. So I definitely, sharks are on my mind. But on the river where I live, obviously I don't have to worry. So that's good.
Well, I'm just curious. I talked with Andy Sullivan a couple episodes back. We're checking out the archives, esteemed audience. And she talked a lot about going out and being adventurous. And she went cage diving with great white sharks.
Wow.
Which I thought, well, why? And I'm one of the nice things about talking to so many authors is, of course, for a long time I had it in my head, like I think a lot of people are guilty of that. Oh, this authors must be like me. We're all the same. No, we're not. I like to sit back and watch things happen and then write about them. And then I talk with somebody like you. You seem like you want to get your hands dirty and really get in there and have an adventure.
I want to live in the moment. I think that when I do things that scare me or that push me, it gets me out of my head. Otherwise, I am just constantly in my head thinking about whether it's stories or life or whatever. I'm just someone who's just, my brain is always going. And so it's a gift to me to do something that requires enough focus that I don't think about anything else.
So if you're out there worried about, what'd you call it, getting your skin ripped off?
Degloving, I'm very careful. That doesn't happen often to people. When it does, it's really a mess. So I'm not worried about that.
Well, I think if you're out there and you're worried about maybe getting your skin ripped off, watching for sharks, you're not concerned about your revision notes, the bills that maybe have been paid, not paid.
Right. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about how to solve a problem with a character or the editorial letter that I just received or how I'm going to make those changes. All I'm thinking about is doing everything right in the moment and just enjoying it, actually.
Yeah, there's no, what was that comment my mother said? What did that mean? Ah!
Right. No, nothing like that.
So that gives me some kind of insight a little bit into who I'm talking to.
Yes.
Adventurer.
Yes, for sure.
And